A West Midlands MEP who's campaigned for today's parliamentary debate on the European Union claims she has strong support for a referendum amongst West Midlands voters. Nikki Sinclaire will today deliver a 20,000 signature petition to Downing Street to add to a further 100,000 she's already handed in. And Nikki will be speaking to Mornings with Joanne Malin here on BBC WM in the next few minutes.
Coming up on the show today, to be or not to be in Europe? That is the question facing our MPs today. The debate has been forced after a West Midlands MEP started a petition which has now got 20,000 signatures. Nikki Sinclaire is delivering that petition to Downing Street this morning, but she's on this show before she does that, so stay with us for that. The first thing we're debating this morning is, though, should we walk out on Europe? Because it's a big day in the House of Commons and a big day for David Cameron. It's thought as many as 70 of his own MPs might rebel against him on the issue of Europe. Parliament will vote on whether we should have a referendum on Britain's place in the European Union. All Conservative, Lib Dem and Labour MPs have been told to vote against the motion calling for a national vote on the issue, but it looks like many of them will not obey. We've got 12 Conservative MPs in the West Midlands. We've tried calling them this morning to ask them which way they're going to vote. These are the results so far. Gavin Williamson, MP for South Staffordshire, says he isn't sure which way he's going to vote yet and doesn't want to comment. Michael Fabricant, if you live in Lichfield, he's your MP. He says he won't comment as he's a government whip. Well, I think that we know which way he's going to vote there. And Richard Shepherd, the MP for Aldridge Brownhills, has told BBC WM he won't comment, but he will be talking in the House of Commons later. We're still waiting for the other 9 to get back to us. Let's talk to the woman who started this entire process now. Nikki Sinclaire is an independent MEP for the West Midlands, and she started a petition which led to today's vote. Good morning, Nikki.
Good morning. Can I just say something? You said earlier it was 20,000. It's actually 120,000
120,000. Sorry, that's my mistake.
We delivered 100,000 a month ago, which has obviously set this process into being, and we're delivering the remaining 21,000. So it's 121,000 this morning.
And it's true that it's your petition, isn't it, that started this whole debate?
Absolutely, yes. It was mentioned in the Backbench Business Committee on the 13th of September, which got this debate. And I've got to say a big thank you to the people of the West Midlands, because out of that 121,000, 51,000 of those signatures came from the West Midlands. So it's a big thank you to the people of West Midlands who've really stood up against the professional elite here.
So that's a lot of people from the West Midlands signing your petition. But is that because you're one of our MEPs,
Probably,
Nikki?
and obviously the campaign vehicles went out more in the West Midlands because it was obviously easier in Stourbridge, in Stafford and Worcester, etc., than it probably did in Berwick-upon-Tweed, for example.
But also that should send, some would say, a message to our local MPs on what people feel about being in Europe around here. Take us right back to the beginning, though, Nikki. When did this start for you?
What, for me personally, or this campaign?
This campaign.
This campaign started a bit more than a year ago. I read the coalition document and I noticed that this procedure was in there, so I started collecting signatures. I got elected on being a Eurosceptic MEP and on telling Europe that we've had enough. So I thought it was right for me to empower the people of the West Midlands originally, but then the country, to call for a referendum. And this has been supported by opinion polls. A YouGov poll recently said that 60% of people want a referendum and 52% would vote to leave the European Union altogether.
Do you think enough of us actually understand what the EU really does, though?
Probably not, but surely that's the fault of politicians. And what I'm actually calling, although I come from a very Eurosceptic base, what I'm actually calling on is actually having a full national debate about the pros and cons of our membership of the European Union. Because if there are all these benefits that we're constantly told about, well, let's have a debate about them and let's trust the people. Why are they so frightened of the people? The problem is that there's this misunderstanding is because people haven't been told the truth.
OK, we've got Rita in Halesowen wants to join the discussion. Good morning to you, Rita.
Good morning, Jo.
What would you like to say on this subject?
I feel very strongly about this because Prime Minister Cameron, Mr Cameron, in his manifesto, when he was putting up for election, oh yes, we shall have a vote, we shall have a referendum. So did the Labour lot when they were in. They said, oh yes, we're going to have a referendum. And I remember William Hague saying something about we're going to have a referendum. We've never had one. And I think they're giving this country away on a plate. I mean, it costs us millions a day for being in Europe. And what are we getting out of it? We've got railway carriages being built in Birmingham. Men are losing their jobs. They're going over to Germany. When you think of other countries that are not in Europe, they're doing quite well, thank you. Yes, I think we need a referendum on it, because I, for one, would be the first in the queue to say, come out.
Well, Nikki, you've got one convert here in Rita from Wales.
Could I just say, we're going down Downing Street at 10:30 to deliver these. We're doing a printout at 10:15, so if people want to add their name to this debate, they can do by visiting www.haveyoursay.eu, and we will print that off, and their name will go down Downing Street at 10:30 this morning.
10:30 this morning. Rita, thanks for making your thoughts known on the show. Nikki Sinclaire is with us, the independent MEP for the West Midlands. She's gathered together 121,000 signatures on a petition forcing a debate tonight with our MPs in the House of Commons. One of those people who will be representing the region of Stourbridge tonight in the Commons is Margot James. She also joins us now. Good morning, Margot.
Oh, good morning, Joanne.
So how are you going to vote tonight in the Commons?
Well, I've put my name down to an amendment to the bill, and I'm not sure whether it'll be called yet. We'll know that later on today when the Speaker selects the amendments. But my amendment calls for the government to publish a white paper next year detailing what powers and regulations the UK should seek to repatriate from Brussels, and make a stand on a new relationship going forward with the European Union.
OK, Nikki Sinclaire, how does that grab you, an amendment?
Well, not at all. I mean, this was the cast iron promises the Conservatives turned into tin pot promises. Look, to renegotiate anything with the European Union, you must have unanimity. You must convince all 26 other countries to agree to that renegotiation. But under Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, it only takes the UK to say that we're leaving the European Union. You don't get much better renegotiation than that.
Margot, what would you say to that?
Well, I'm completely opposed to leaving the European Union, so I suppose that's what I've got to say to that, Joanne.
Yeah, but what about renegotiation? What about the point of renegotiation? You agree that you have to have all the other countries to agree to renegotiation?
Well, I think the present crisis in the Eurozone will change the landscape fundamentally, and there will be some desire on the part of Eurozone members to impose a new treaty, I think, to get closer fiscal union between those particular parts of the EU. And in return for that, I think our government should make a stand on softening some of the links we already have. And the other point I'd make is that it's not just the UK that would benefit. I think that would get a great deal of support from a lot of other member states. It's not just our economy that's being affected adversely by over-regulation from Brussels. It's a lot of other economies too. So I'd seek to build up links with other member states.
But the reality is, Margot, that the majority of the countries in the European Union are net takers. We're a net giver. We're the second largest contributor to the European Union. So any renegotiation that once again needs complete unanimity, are the Greeks going to say, actually, yes, UK, you don't need to give us so much money. Yes, you don't need to do that. Of course, they're going to want our money, as is Spain, as is Portugal, as in Ireland. So you're not going to get consent from them. They're going to want exactly the same from us as they've got at the moment. So we've got no shot. The Conservative Party are being totally disingenuous.
Nikki, let Margot come in there, please, Nikki.
Thanks very much. First of all, what I'm talking about doesn't cost any money, so it's not a question of countries giving up subsidies that they formerly were receiving. It's the over-regulatory nature of Brussels that I and colleagues would want to see rolling back, and that doesn't cost money. So I don't think there's a financial argument against it. And in any case, the European Union is going to have to fundamentally change. There won't be the money for subsidies to the grand scale we've seen in the last few decades. All the money that's going spare will be going to, deal with the deficits that have been built up by the southern European countries. Unfortunately, thanks to our government, not much of that money will come from Britain.
Margot, could you just explain to us why we shouldn't leave? What the impact would be if we got a referendum and we all voted to pull out? What would be so wrong with that?
I think that Britain's future is an exporting nation, and 50% of our exports goes to European Union member states. And I think if we pulled out, we'd first of all get the trade barriers put up against us. But secondly, I think that we would do so much damage to our reputation with other European countries that there would be a negative reaction to Britain, which would reflect in our trade situation, which would be a very bad thing.
Do you think voters here in the West Midlands care about our reputation, though, within other European countries, Margot?
I think the exporting companies do, yes, definitely. I mean, in my area of the Black Country, we have 15% of jobs still in manufacturing. We export a lot. Exports are going well at the moment, according to the Black Country Chamber of Commerce, and 50% of them go to European Union countries, whether we like it or not. And yes, those companies and their employees would care very much about Britain standing with the countries they're trying to sell their products to.
Rita called in a few moments ago, Margot, and she said, look, politicians, including Mr Cameron, promise to look at Europe, and then as soon as they're in power, they seem to back down. What would you say to people like Rita?
Well, I think she's got a very good point, and I am disappointed that our government hasn't done more to stand up for against some of the regulations that are coming in. I mean, we are doing more than the last government did, I'm pleased to say, but I think we should be doing more now that the Eurozone is clearly in crisis. This is an opportunity, not just for us, but also, as I was saying earlier, for other member states to renegotiate a much more competitive situation vis-à-vis Brussels, so that, we can all restore our competitiveness against the emerging economies of the world. If we don't do that, we're in serious trouble.
But, Margot, a lot of people will be asking today, what is it that MPs are fearing? If the motion is passed tonight and we get a referendum, what do you fear us having a vote, basically? We've got 51,000 people here in the West Midlands have signed Nikki's petition. She's got 120,000 signatures saying, yes, let's have a referendum. I read about a recent poll recently that said 1 in every 2 people asked in this country said they wanted out of Europe. Why will you not give us the chance to decide?
Well, I'd say 2 things to that. First of all, the petition is great. I'm all for that. But the petition is to get a debate in Parliament. The petition isn't to secure the result that the petitioners want. And I think that there is a big distinction there. The people have spoken and they're entitled to a debate. I'm just saying that the way I'm going to vote is perhaps not the way the petitioners want me to vote, but they've called for a vote and they'll get one. And the second point is that I don't really think that in normal times Europe is such a big issue for most people, because all the polling that we see shows that if you ask people what the main concerns are to them, Europe features very, very low down the list. Really, less than 10% of people will cite Europe as an issue of greatest concern to them. So I don't really go along with the fact that most people want out of Europe. Most people want sanity in Europe. And I couldn't agree with them more. There's a lot that needs to change, but I don't think most people want us to get out of the European Union.
Margot James, thank you very much. Nikki Sinclaire, so what happens today, 10:30 for you down at Downing Street again?
Can I correct something? A majority of our exports do not go to the European. What actually happens, our exports to Asia go via the Hook of Holland, and the EU counts that as an import into the European Union, out of the European Union. All the people of the West Midlands have to do is look at the shops and look at the cars, all the German and the French cars. Where are the British-made cars? We are a net exporter from the European Union. We trade more with the world, and we always have traded with the world. And it's another disingenuous comment. Remember all the scaremongering of the late 90s. If we didn't join the euro, it would be an economic disaster for us. And that's proven to be untrue. And you now have Conservative and Labour politicians scaremongering on what would happen in the European Union. It's costing us £45 million a day. And it does cost these regulations. The Common Agricultural Policy is 48% of the EU's budget. And that makes food. We're producing food in the West Midlands and milk that has to be thrown away thanks to the Common Agricultural Policy. And the EU and our government are totally powerless to reform it. Blair gave away half the rebate, the Thatcher rebate, so that the French would agree to having talks to reform the CAP. And that doesn't even begin to next year. And how many years ago did Blair give away that rebate?
Well, Nikki Sinclaire, your petition has forced the debate tonight, so you've won one battle. There's thought that 70 of David Cameron's own MPs might rebel against him referendum on the issue of Europe? Do you think that's likely?
I would hope so, and it should be more. I mean, who do the politicians want to listen to? Do they want to listen to their electorate, who at the end of the day, MPs work for their electorate, and who should they listen to? Party whips or their electorate, their employers?
Nikki Sinclaire, thanks for joining us on the show today. To be or not to be in Europe, that's the question that MPs are going to debate.